It being 7 o'clock, Monday, February 12th, 2018, I'm hereby calling this meeting to order. If everybody could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk Giovanni, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Giovanni, can you do roll?
Assessor Moylan Cry, Highway Commissioner Kazmierczak, Clerk Giovanni's here, Supervisor Marask,
Here.
Trustee Jones,
Here.
Trustee Carabota, Trustee McKenzie,
Here.
Trustee Sweeney.
Here.
Before we move on substantively, do either of you know if Trustee Carabota plans on?
Yes, he's coming.
Okay. Is there any request for public participation at this time? Please stand and say your name.
Doreen Prowett, Park Ridge, Illinois. Good evening, Supervisor Marask, Trustee Jones, Trustee McKenzie, Trustee Sweeney, and Clerk Giovanni. I would like to begin by stating, wait for Trustee Carabota.
Let the minutes reflect that Trustee Carabota is present.
Thank you.
And Doreen Prowick of Park Ridge was just about to make a public comment.
I would like to begin by stating that neither Supervisor Marask nor any of my co-workers were aware that I was going to speak this evening. The following statements are my own personal opinions. Based on comments made at the January 23rd board meeting, I suspect that a majority of the board may vote to stay in open session to discuss employee performance evaluations and raises. I am not privy as to who has been recommended for a raise, nor do I want to know. I am not embarrassed to admit that I would be very uncomfortable listening to my co-workers' evaluations. I strongly feel that this subject is none of my business nor anyone else's business except the board and the administrator. Let me assure all of you that I am a firm believer in transparency. However, the Illinois Open Meetings Act does delineate 33 exceptions that allow a public body to go into closed session. In particular, Section 2, Paragraph A, Subparagraph 1, states that a public body may hold closed meetings to consider, among other things, performance and compensation of specific employees, definitive subjects which the board will be discussing tonight. In my opinion, performance evaluations and compensation discussions are of a personal and confidential nature and should be limited to closed session only. With all due respect to the board, if any of you were in this situation, how would you feel if your performance evaluation was made public for anyone to see and hear? Would any of you consider that scenario an invasion of your privacy? How would you feel if you found out that a coworker got a raise and you didn't? It is my firm belief that by staying in open session to discuss what I deem as personal and confidential could possibly have a negative impact on some of the employees. Pursuant to the power granted under the Illinois Open Meetings Act, not all board discussions must take place in open session. I therefore respectfully request that the board vote to move into closed session for the sole purpose of discussing employee performance and compensation. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Pruitt. Is there any other public participation? Hearing none. I am now going to ask for a motion to move into closed session under Section 5 ILCS 120/2, Section C1, for the sole purpose of discussion of performance and compensation of specific employees of Maine Township. And let it be part of the record that there will be no action taken in such closed session. And may I have such a motion? If nobody wishes to make this motion, I will make the motion. And I'm going to move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 5 ILCS 120/2, Section C1, for the sole purpose of the discussion of performance and compensation of specific employees of Maine Township. May I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
I'd like to, if I can, Laura, I want to thank Mr. Dowd. In furtherance of what Drew was saying, Mr. Dowd provided us with a memo that states as follows. The question was raised at the January 23rd, 2018 board meeting if a closed session is mandated for the discussion of employee salaries and potential raises. I reviewed the statute and I went with the opinion that closed sessions concerning all categories for which they are allowed are optional, they're not mandatory. The governing word in the statute is quote may end quote as opposed to quote shall end quote. However, the township in the past has deemed it precedent to deliberate in closed session on matters covered by the exceptions to the Open Meetings Act, such as salary deliberations and employee performance evaluations, pending litigation matters, property and purchase considerations, etc. I apologize for not having the answer to this inquiry at the board meeting. While I have been asked often in the past if the board may convene a closed session on a particular subject, this was the first time I was asked if it was a must. And again, I want to thank Mr. Dowd for getting back to us with that clarification. It was very helpful.
I agree. The Open Meetings Act is definitely permissive. And is there any other discussion? There were some other things included in your board packet. Other acts do have effect on our proceedings. One of them was included, that being the Personnel Record Protection Act, which mandates that performance evaluations, disciplinary matters pursuant to specific employees are not foilable. While it does not specifically answer what Dave is talking about, it does, by logical inference, which us lawyers are known to do, if something is not foilable, it does stand to reason that it shouldn't be in public. So I included that as another caution on our duties and our actions, as well as a case, Copley Press, that interpreted the congruity between the Open Meetings Act and the Record Protection Act, and held that they should be read together. aside from that, I would state that all legal, we are 3 lawyers up here, all legal reasons aside, public participation comment was well taken. It, in my opinion, does nobody any good for morale or anything else to have discussions of a specific person's employee evaluation and their supervisor's evaluation and whatnot in open meeting. I see no transparency effort that it accomplishes, and there is no action being contemplated. The transparency portion will come into play in March when we end up with those things on the agenda for vote. And at that time, any objections, discussion, and all of the transparency notions will come into play. And for all those reasons, I do strongly believe that it would be under Open Meetings Act absolutely permissive, long-standing case law permits, that done. And if there's no more discussion, I'll call for a vote.
The only other discussion, Laura, that is for me is I have no problem with the notion that, these are private matters and they should be in closed session. But I would hope that we can first discuss, which I did not get in my board packet, what the salary increase budget is, the total increase, because I feel that we can't speak to certain raises without knowing what our budget is.
Okay, so not unfortunate, but we are constrained by other laws. So on page 97, and I will be providing some additional documents in
Page
closed
97?
session. 97 of the Township Officials Laws and Duties Handbook, under number F, agendas, because notice is an agenda. I'm sorry, I'll just get down to the nitty-gritty. The requirement of a regular meeting agenda shall not preclude the consideration of, but not action on, items not specifically set forth in the agenda. However, for special meetings, only matters listed on the agenda may be discussed. So it has been held to be error by the Public Access Counselor to discuss salary and performance of specific employees in the context of the overall budget. I can get the case off my desk. It's a public access opinion case. And it was held there in closed session. So since the budget overall will be done in March, I can tell you with certain cautions, because of this section, it's not on the discussion of the budget is not on the agenda. But I can tell you that for 6 hours today, I did meet, and we're almost finalized. And our department heads have met the target of 10% reduction in each department, and in many cases more. And we did every conceivable striving, and I think achieved it, the goal of actual budget. So you see the conundrum, Trustee McKenzie, is you won't know the effect of the budget until those considerations. But the line item, if that's what you're asking, will more than cover it, because even with the 10% reduction in the overall admin budget, and then in each department budget.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I don't want to keep going on this subject because it's not on our agenda. So I can, all we're doing tonight, all I'm asking to do tonight is discuss these 6 specific people. I'm happy to explain it at the next meeting, you know, in open session, have it on the agenda, because again, it will be on the agenda again, because I'll be asking to go into closed session for the next 2 departments, right? Because we split this up so that we wouldn't all be overwhelmed by, and the whole process is not to compare one person to another, right? It's to compare whether that person has met the benchmarks set, the goals, the initiatives, the qualifications, the objective criteria. And certainly it's considered within the department, so we split it up by department. Tonight we will be discussing, if such a vote happens, we will be discussing some employees from the Maine Streamers Department and the Maine State Department. So to the extent that I answered your question, I hope I did. But I can further develop it at the next meeting.
Okay, so I think that you said that the vote, if there is a vote, on the actual line item salary, so people's increases, each employee's increases will be in March.
Yeah, that would be when, at the time we actually adopt the budget. It might even be April. It'll be the time we actually adopt the budget.
So will it be like we did for the agency funding, where we will have a spreadsheet that includes all of the different meetings?
That's what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, right.
I don't know, I shouldn't say we, I don't know what the process is, so
Well, this process is a little different. I didn't ask this board at this time for an across-the-board cost of living raise. What I'm asking is a performance-based raise. So we haven't done this before. We're trying to tie, which I think is a 21st century notion. You know, we're trying to tie any potential increase to performance, which I think is the standard that at least I as a trustee have been moving towards. And that's not to say that there can't be any later discussion if the board wishes of a cost of living raise. I think Susan had requested some benchmarks from other townships. We've heard from 4 other ones. There were 2 that were doing combinations, merit plus cost of living, which is a little bit of what we've done in the past, but not as formal as I'm trying to make it for you guys with objective criteria and doing this in an orderly fashion. And yes, such a spreadsheet is why we're doing this on separate evenings. So we're only bringing to you those people that were suggested for those increases. So we have a recommended, like the department heads evaluated their staff, and then they added, I think you have them, some information as to what they were requesting and what it was based on. And then in later ones, there will be ones that other department heads are in charge of, or that I'm in charge of, or that Dane is in charge of. So it does go through 3 layers of screening. So yes, there'll be a recommendation. And yes, if you would choose to have a spreadsheet, that's fine. It's, like I said, this is discussion. All that's contemplated is discussion. For the next 3, what I'm asking for the next 3 closed sessions about this is discussion. So whatever final vote on it would be taken in open session and taken prior to us passing the budget. So you would have all that information.
It's good to have context of
Right.
So-
But I didn't want to overwhelm everybody with, because it's still going on. I mean, we have all the evaluations in, but at the risk, again, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable in this room.
That is-
But, so I just didn't want to overwhelm the board in one night with, like,
That's
a
fine.
lot of evaluations. But, you know, we thought each department was very, very, we all had meetings, they did their own, and then met, Dana Berman, and hammered out what, in their opinion, they wanted to do. I mean, not just their personal opinion, I didn't mean like, so I would answer.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
In the case that you referenced to, Laura, we're gonna have a copy of that before March, so we can
Yes.
look at that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You mean that we can't discuss budget in the closed session?
There's something, yeah, you can't discuss it, correct.
Yes, absolutely. I can have Dory, I mean, it's right on my
Yeah,
desk.
right, is it the packet?
Yeah, yeah,
I can make copies right now.
yeah. I have a copy.
Thank you.
I didn't anticipate that we would, so otherwise. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Clerk Giovanni, would you call the roll, please?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweeney?
Yes. Okay. The board is now going to adjourn, and we are going to go into closed session, which is in the back room. As to the personnel, there is no reason for you to have to stay because no action will be taken. And with the board's permission, I'm going to excuse the stand.
Great night.
It's good to go. Okay. We have just come out of closed session. I'm going to make a motion to come out of closed session. Can I have a second?
Second?
Aye. And is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I may have a motion to adjourn. Oh, the time of coming out of closed session was 9:14 PM. We're back in open session. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye. So having a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Good night.